Thank you. For those of you that are at home, we invite you to consider the legacies of the land and the histories of the people where you are, and that you consider to also do an acknowledgement in your own right. For those of you that are new to Dance NYC as an organization, Dance NYC delivers 5 core services to the field of dance: advocacy, action-oriented research, leadership training and convening, technological resources through our website, and grant making. All of these are to empower dance makers and cultural workers to build audiences and to strengthen the collective voice for our art form. We work in alliance with the National Dance Service Organization, Dance USA, and drive local and national synergies through dance service delivery. You can learn more about our programs and what we do through our website, dance.nyc. As some of you may know, Dance NYC launched a new campaign on May 14th, declaring loudly that artists are necessary workers. This campaign demands the acknowledgement, representation, and integration of dance and arts workers into the decision-making that will envision our future post-pandemic. Artists serve New York City at every level, leading tourism, strengthening education, fueling the economy, and ensuring our health, wellness, and imaginations. So far, Dance NYC, through this campaign, has released a campaign video featuring members of our dance community displaying our strength and power in numbers, written a letter, and are now working with the Mayor's Office of New York City, as well as New York City and Company, to insist on dance having a seat at the table. And lastly, we have curated this series of public conversations with art workers to discuss challenges, offer considerations, and envision our way forward as a field. Without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to our moderator for today. Our conversation will be focusing on how dance makers are processing the simultaneous storms of COVID-19, violence against Black life, and the current and ongoing uprisings. I'm pleased to welcome our moderator, Dance NYC's Manager of Justice, Equity, and Inclusion Initiatives, Candace Thompson-Zachery, who will lead us in some opening remarks and then introduce our speakers. Welcome, Candace, and take it away.
Thanks, Alejandra. So hi, everyone. Usually I'm in Alejandra's spot, but I'm moderating today. My name is Candace Thompson-Zachery. My pronouns are she, hers. I'm currently working and living on the land of the Lenape and Canarsie people. I'm a non-disabled Black Caribbean woman. I'm currently wearing a black shirt. It's my Dance NYC shirt. I'm a New Yorker for dance. Pearl earrings, a multicolored head wrap, and my background is a red wall with books and shelving. So today's conversation is entitled A Moment to Pause, Dystopia. And the original premise of the conversation was to talk about the effects of COVID-19 and the way dance and arts workers have been affected and are making sense of this moment. You know, we find ourselves now not only battling physical distancing and precarious health situations, changed work circumstances, but now we're also dealing with the full onslaught of racial violence and this new waves of the Black Lives Matter movement. So, you know, it's a storm of systems that are basically all colliding at the same time. But this conversation should focus on how dance makers are making sense of it, what they're doing, how they're thinking, what kind of things they're leading or not leading, how they're resting or not resting, and hopefully to engage with all of you who are watching, many of whom are dance makers as well, to help you reflect on your own practices, your own challenges and circumstances, and to prompt, you know, conversations toward, you know, surviving, thriving, solutions, and just us coming together as a field. And so in terms of how we've had to pause for COVID, you know, for many people, the conditions under which we're making dance, that has changed. So people are still making, but, you know, now we're working, doing rehearsals through Zoom, we're making dances in our living rooms, or we're not making at all. A lot of people's health and wellness has been affected. You know, dance makers tend to identify their self-worth and their productivity with being able to rehearse and perform. And now that has been limited. And then materially, a lot of us are out of work or under-resourced, and people who have been already in precarious situations are now even in further precarious situations. So, you know, a lot we're talking about folks who are of Alana communities, Black and brown peoples, immigrant communities, and disabled folks. And then now with this, the racial violence that is more visible, I would say, not new, but just more in the public eye. Many of us are in mourning, especially those in the Black community, and we're, as a field, it feels like we're reflecting on how white supremacist culture has guided the kind of resources that are available, who those resources are available to, who makes the decisions about how things are distributed and who is visible, and who can make work in certain ways, and what stories get told about certain peoples through their work. And then, you know, we're also looking at how the dance community has responded. You know, some people, we had the dance industry-wide blackout on Tuesday. Dance NYC itself took off for a few days to mourn and to prioritize the wellness of our staff and to process how we're complicit in some of these systems and to redirect our energies. But other people are signing solidarity statements, and, you know, there's a lot that's happening that's, I guess, specific to the dance community itself, and we want to look at some of those. And then, yeah, just how individual people are managing. So that's where our conversation is going today. So I want to invite our guests to come and join me in my virtual room. And we'll start with just everyone introducing themselves. Yes, we're here. So let's start with everyone introducing themselves, and, you know, we have our whole spiel that we go through, but I think for each person, go also a little bit more into what your practice is as a dance maker, as an art maker, whatever your role is, and also, yeah, who you are as an individual, maybe outside of dance and art making. So Melanie, maybe we start with you.
Hi, I'm Melanie George. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am currently residing in Hudson, New York, which is the land of the Mohican peoples. I am a Black woman with a large volume of natural coily hair. I am wearing a black t-shirt with the crown of Jean-Michel Basquiat on it in white, and there is a gray background, a light gray background behind me. My role in the field is that I am a dance educator, primarily working with college students. I am a dance maker focusing on jazz dance. I am a dramaturg, and I work with a lot of different people making a lot of different kinds of art. And that means that I am working in New York City quite a bit, even though I don't choose to live there because y'all rent is too high.
Listen.
And also traveling a lot around the country doing my jazz work.
Nice.
And a scholar, I should say that too. I write a lot. I'm a scholar.
Thank you. Yeah. Yo-Yo, you want to go?
Sure. I'm Yo-Yo. I go by she, her pronouns. I have black hair and blonde tips, and I'm wearing a black t-shirt and black headphones. I'm currently in a blue room with a window that has a lot of natural light. And I'm currently talking to you from Mystic, Connecticut, otherwise known as the stolen lands of the Pequot and Mohican people. And yeah, I'm an artist. I'm an interdisciplinary artist. I make a lot of animations and use weird cameras and microphones and put them on my body and make music with my bone sounds. I have recently entered the space of disability arts, you know, coming into my own disability as a chronically ill person, and have been making a lot of movement-based work and movement workshop spaces for specifically chronically ill and disabled folks in New York City. And yeah, that's about it for me. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that introduction. Q.
Yo, what's good, people? Peace to everyone. My name is Quilan Q Arnold. Pronouns are he, his, him. I reside in the land of Brooklyn, which belongs to the Lenape and Canarsie peoples. I am a non-disabled, heterosexual, Afro-American male. I'm swagged out in a little brass chain, blue and gold shirt, glasses, and a cap that covers some dreads. And I am in a white room. I'm actually in an Airbnb, so I'm not very familiar with this room. But yeah, and me as what I do in the industry and in the field, I'm a dancer and performer through Camille A. Brown and Dancers and Rennie Harris Pure Movement. Then I am a scholar and educator. I teach at Hunter College, Gibney Dance Center, and Perry Dance Capizio Center. And then I'm also a hip hop activist, specifically as it pertains to the street and club dance communities and forms. I do that through a self-created organization called the On Cue Team, which does the dirty work to make the visions of that community a reality. I just want to also just thank Candace for being here and facilitating us. Thank you to Brenda and everybody who is doing the dirty work to make this happen and to bring us together, and Dance NYC for doing the same. Thank you to my ancestors of all shades and colors who have allowed me to be here with the beautiful panelists that are here, and all of the audience members who are listening. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Q. Appreciate that. And Leal.
Hi, everyone. My name is Leal Zielinska. I use she, her. I am also currently in Brooklyn, so residing in the stolen land of the Lenape and Canarsie people. I am white, I have a shaved head. I'm wearing a black t-shirt, which apparently is the dress code of sorts today.
Hardly.
Almost uncoordinated. I am in my bedroom, and there's a plant to my right side and a gray wall behind me with a picture that kind of resembles me in a sad way. I am a dance artist, dancer, artistic associate with Gibney Company, which also means that I do a lot of advocacy work, and I specifically focus on mental health. So I run my project that's called Okay, Let's Unpack This, where I'm trying to normalize these conversations, connect people to resources, let those voices be heard of those of us who have had a lot of experience in the dance field and with mental health, mental illness. And yeah, and also I wanted to thank everyone who's in the trenches of organizing this week, especially. So appreciate you all and everyone who's here, my fellow panelists and everyone tuning in.
Thank you. I am going off script here. I feel like I need to move. Is that okay with other people? Yes? Okay. So I'm just gonna do my a little, 8 count something and then pass it to somebody else. How about that? I need to move. All right, here I go. All right, I pass it to Yo-Yo.
And I'm passing it to Leal.
I'll pass it to Q.
Hey.
Melanie.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, get that, Joe.
Yes. All right, thanks for that. Just like to connect us in our little virtual room that we have going here, and to prepare us to dive into this conversation, which might be, will require some emotional effort. So thank you. The first thing that I'm diving right in, and the name of the conversation is A Moment to Pause Dystopia. And this word dystopia, I'm looking at the definition: an imagined state or society in which there's great suffering or injustice, typically one that is totalitarian or post-apocalyptic. So this word came to me in terms of describing my perception of what's happening around me, and the feeling that I feel disconnected from my usual world. I feel like I'm living in a parallel reality. I also feel like the realities of people like me are closing in on me. So it's like all of these very strange ways of perceiving what's happening in the wider US, in New York City, in my community in Trinidad. It's like how I'm processing what's happening. So I just want to know how that word resonates with you guys in terms of in terms of how you're experiencing what's happening right now. You know, and we talked a little bit in the introduction about all the things that are happening that are affecting dance makers, affecting people in New York, affecting Black folks. So I think we should just go around and maybe talk about how that resonates with you. If there's another word that captures how you're experiencing what's happening, and then maybe how that also affects you like on a visceral level. I think I'll let whoever's ready can just kind of like unmute and go.
I'll go. I've been thinking about this all day because the idea of a dystopia implies that the world before was fine. And America is a dystopia. If that's the case, like if we're using the definition, like the actual founding of this country is a dystopia. And so I've been struggling with how to answer this all day because it doesn't actually resonate for me as someone who's like really into words. I don't know what the alternative word would be because my brain is real foggy. It's real foggy. I am transparency. I am exhausted, and I mean on every level, an emotional level, a mental level, a spiritual level, a physical level. I'm just exhausted, and I was tired before we got to COVID. Yeah, certainly tired before we got to this uprising that we're in right now of political protests around racial injustice. But like all of these things that are happening, they're byproducts of the world that we were already living in.
Yep.
So to me, it's more about like, I guess hitting an apex, but like, is it really an apex? Is what we're at an apex? Was the pre-civil rights movement not an apex? Was the 1800s not an apex? Was the bringing of African people to the United States not an apex? Was polio not an apex? Like all of these things are just like we're cyclical in how we do it, and it feels like the apex because a generation has died off and a new generation is here who hasn't experienced it firsthand. And so my mother is 87 years old. And I call her every day or every other day. And if I don't call her, she calls me to make sure that, frankly, she is still alive during this pandemic and keeping her ass in the house. It's really important to me, just like stay in the house. And I asked her, like, how are you experiencing these protests? Because my family lives in Detroit and she got married in 1967. So she's been through another version of this, and she was born in 1933. So she's been through a couple of other versions of this, And she said to me, oh, it just washes over me because I've seen it before. Woo.
That's scary.
It's but it's real.
Yeah.
And it's a way that she keeps, that's her way of self-care of like, So anyway, all this to say, I don't know about a dystopia. I don't know. Like I was living my life in a certain way before COVID, and it completely upended my professional life in every conceivable way.
Yeah.
I no longer have an income. I no longer have a job. All of my work for the next, 6 to 12 months has been canceled. Like all of those things are true. For the first time in my adult life, I am unemployed. And I am 47. That is wild for the first time in my adult life to not have a job. But I don't know. I digress. I'm talking a lot and I'm not making any actual clear points. So I will pass it on to whoever would like to pick it up.
No, but thank you for sharing that. I mean, that is one version of it, right? Where everything that's been before this has been the dystopia. This is just like the revelation, another revelation. Yeah. Other folks?
Melanie, thank you for that. I mean, that literally takes the words out of my mouth in regards to the direct response to the question. For me, it's this thing about there are just so many layers. There's so many layers as to what's happening. And so in that way, I feel the heaviness and the gravity of all of those layers, while simultaneously existing in this place of wanting to figure it out. Like that's just how I work as a scholar, as a dance maker, as a creative. I want to get down to the quintessential essence. And from that desire, I'm like a little invigorated, or not invigorated, but fueled to be like, what is this about? What are the patterns that continuously happen? And to continue doing that work. And then where do we go from here? How do we make a shift to disrupt that pattern? And so I'm curious and driven by that. I think speaking of which, I've been learning from Paulo Freire, who is an author, but I know him for creating Pedagogy of the Oppressed, which I recommend to anyone who is listening. And he has this term called conscientization, where he describes it as self-reflection meeting with action. And I feel as though this time has been a opportunity for that, where it is COVID hitting, and blessings to all of the families who have been and are dealing with COVID and the travesties that come with it. For me personally, it has been a time of self-reflection, of stop, of stillness. And then from there, it's like this onslaught, torrential downpour of, again, what has already been in existence, with all of these videos, with my people as an Afro-American male, like constantly getting murdered. And this visceral, talking about visceral reaction, this anger, this feeling it's a fight or flight, and I want to fight. Place. It's a sense of hopelessness, where it's like fight, but fight against whom and against what? It feels like the allies and the oppressor live in the same skin. It's like, it's confusing. And so then I feel like an idiot because I'm mad. I'm like, mad at what though? And so once again, that gets back into this place for me of dissecting, like going back into the patterns and seeing what has been, and also to uplift what Melanie said with her grandmother.
Mother.
Mother.
Yeah.
Your mom.
Yeah.
My bad. But that conversation needs to be happening for all of us, including myself, to fill these intergenerational gaps, to let us know that we are not alone, that this is not the first time. And we can go, they have insight that I believe allows us to attack it a little differently, or to just substantiate the way that we're attacking it already. So these are kind of the multiple layers that I'm thinking of, and that COVID and the racist violence has been hitting me right now. And yeah, I think that answers the question. So
no, thank you. Yeah, I'm definitely with you on like this kind of like torrential downpour that we're experiencing, in terms of just like image after image, after video, after video, after message, after action, after, there's just a lot happening, and a lot to process and take in. And then, yeah, like how we're physically and emotionally responding: anger, fight or flight, paralysis, confusion, being like fueled to do more work, to do what kind of work. So I'm with you. And then this thing about this intergenerational conversation that is even more, I guess, even more important right now, like talking to our elders, but then also talking to the, you know, the ones who are after us about how they're processing. Leal or Yo-Yo?
Thank you both for sharing so much and so generously. And I think I can relate really to what Melanie said in terms of the wording. And I think having seen that question of the dystopia, how I'm understanding it is that a lot of people are realizing we're in a dystopia, or that, you know, this country or the systems are a dystopia, but it was already there. I think it's just a lot of what's already there is just coming to the surface. It's just like coming out in these extremely apparent ways, and it's impossible in a way, I guess, to ignore it. Like you said, Candace, also the torrential rains. And I feel like with everything going on right now and with people being home, like it's impossible to ignore almost, but none of this is new. It might be amplified, or it might be, you know, there's a spotlight on a lot more right now. Yeah, but it's not new. So I think it's also just exposing like who's been paying attention, who's been,
True.
You know, who turned an ally last week, and who put out a statement, who realized they're white this past week. There's a lot, and like I don't want to absolve myself in any ways, you know, because I am a white woman, and I also on top of that didn't grow up in this country, so I have like extra homework of like, you know, American history, and like even more so like looking for answers more actively. There's a responsibility there. Look, I've been thinking about it and talking to more of my European friends. Like we get off the plane in the States and we're treated as white people, and there's already that privilege. I could have spent like 10 hours in this country, and like, you know, there's a lot, obviously a lot of work to do, but been thinking about that a lot. And thinking also about how everything feels reactionary right now.
Yeah.
But also thinking about how got to move past like condoning thinking about like my guilt of this being reactionary versus like just doing it, because it's not about me. It's about like, okay, what can I do? What is the first step? What is the next step of addressing some of these things? And I mean, COVID itself is exposing so much in this country and across the world of what's not working, what the systems of oppression are. And then on top of that, all the surfaced violence that is being extra exposed right now. So yeah, that was a lot of like, bleh, but that's kind of what's going on in my brain right now. So that's pretty transparent and honest. So
yeah,
I'll pass it to Yo-Yo.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
We can.
Okay, sweet. I'm like calling in from my phone because I think my video chat is not the best connection right now.
Great, we hear you clearly.
Okay, great. Yeah, I echo what Melanie said in terms of how for so many of us, the United States has never been a safe place. And like seeing people realize that for the first time, like now, is kind of outrageous. And you know, it's a little bit hurtful. It's very hard to deal with that fact, and to deal with like the disbelief that these things have been happening. And it's very much a process that I'm dealing with in my body. I can tell like my face hurts a lot. Like everything here is just like so tight. And I'm sleeping with my jaw clenched, so my like jaw like hurts a lot too. And like that is when I get sleep. I've been having like nighttime moments where it's like 11 p.m. and I'm exhausted, but I can't sleep. So I just like end up like staying up till 3 a.m. and, you know, kind of just like being extremely wakeful and holding space for the things that I didn't get to hold space for during the day. And it's, yeah, it's very much a visceral experience, and it's not something that I think is going to be going away for a while.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I mean, I hear everything that everybody's saying. Like, I agree that basically, and there's this, what is it? That the pandemic is a portal. So maybe that portal idea is a more apt here in terms of it just revealing or opening what's been going wrong, what's been unavailable for a lot of people for a long time, and how a lot of people have been suffering, and then now that just more visible and experiential for a lot more of us. But I think personally, the dystopia word resonated just because I think I had to recalibrate how I like live on a daily basis, or how I perceive my surroundings. And so it's like you get sucked in now, you know, now I'm also working 9 to 5 for the first time in 16, 17 years. So it's like you get sucked into this virtual world. And so like at the end of a day, it's like, okay, where am I again? And then you're like, oh yes, I'm still stuck in the house because I've been here for the last 3 months. But on the virtual world is where you're understanding all the violence that's happening everywhere else, all of the injustice that's happening. So I think the dystopia word resonated for me in terms of how I'm like navigating the difference in how I'm experiencing my environment, if that makes sense.
Candace, what I think is interesting about that though is that, you know, the way our field functions is there's this sense of, if you're able to work, somehow you have made it. Somehow you have, you know, attained something that was unachievable for most people. And that can be any version of what your career is in the field. But then what we found in a span of 2 weeks in March, as our entire field crumbled over 2 weeks, which is insane, right? The entire thing collapsed in a 14-day period, basically. That the thing we made it to was actually the dystopia, right? Like the thing, like it was like the curtain dropped, and then like all the carnage revealed itself. Even though really, if we had looked, it had been there all along. It had been a house of cards all along. Yeah. Right. And so this whole idea of like, oh, I've lost my career to the dystopia. I'm like, oh, my career was in the dystopia. I think that's what I'm trying to say, is that like, you know, it was never outside of a thing. It isn't a thing that happened to me. It was actually in the thing the whole time. You know, which is a riddle inside of a puzzle, inside of a metaphor, but it's a fucking mess, right? Like, that's what we have learned, is that our field, which we already sort of do, is actually a goddamn mess.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. Responses, anybody?
Mine is yes. And for us who have been doing the work in that dystopia, now what? Right? Like, how are we coming together under some kind of core unified response to reach for a system that looks at all of us as a human? To go past this dystopic system, oppressive system, into a place where we can find our humanity.
Yeah.
As cheesy as that might sound, it's like, and as not just as people who do the work, but especially for oppressed people, we live that work. And so we are I believe we are the most equipped to think of what that alternative system is, that will be this phoenix that rises from this house of cards.
Yeah. I think, and now I'm responding as Candace Thompson, the person, not Candace Thompson who works for Dance NYC. There's a way that I think maybe about 2 or 3 years ago, I kind of figured out that this wasn't real, if that makes sense. And so my work had started to get very, very narrow. Do you know what I mean? Like I would only perform my work. My work would be teaching my soca class. My work would be only performing at my festival. My work would be only working with my friends. You know what I mean? Like my work as a dancer started to get very, very narrow. And I think that's because those were the ways that I felt that it became sustainable. It became a system that wasn't only doing this, extracting, and that I was in communication with people who could see me in the way that I wanted to be seen and who could give back to my work as much as I was giving to them. So yeah, that's an aside in a sense, but not really, because I think what you're pointing to is the fact that what we need and what a lot of us, especially I think artists of color, some of us have figured out, I can't speak for everybody. And especially I think in Africanist practices, we practice sharing, we practice marooning, we have all of these like cyclical practices that are more equitable forms of exchange, more equitable forms of interaction, more equitable forms of sharing that I think need to be, remember that that's there. And especially those of us who've been working in the system for a long time. Yeah. So in that vein, moving on to this idea of pausing, right? So given everything that is happening right now, there are 3 words that I used: stillness, grieving, and rebuilding, as things that people are doing in response to or as a continuation of what's been happening. So maybe, we can go around talking about if you're doing any of those or how you're responding in this moment, and then how has your art making or dance facilitating practice shifted in response to what we're experiencing now?
Is anyone making anything? Like, is anyone, I mean, Q, I know you have been really, really busy, like I see you, I follow you on Instagram, but like, so I'm just going to say that like my experience has been since March to be in this place of stillness as a result of grief. Because again, my whole life, it kind of caved in on itself, right? Professional life. And I want to say, specifically, I think for women, we are often, workaholic is used pejoratively in terms of when we're really invested in our work. And I've certainly had, I've told these anecdotes many times, but I've certainly had men that I've dated say, we should break up because you're a workaholic, like, which is such a bizarre thing to do. Cause like, why wouldn't you want someone who's invested in like their livelihood, but whatever. Anyway, I say all this to say that's something that's been thrown at me since I was in my 20s. Right. And so to have like my whole livelihood go away and my work, which is a big part of how I self-identify, I recognize myself most in my work. And I have, at this age, close to 50, I have no problem with that being how I identify. I make no apologies about that. And so my grief has just been like, I don't have any work to do. Like I don't recognize myself. I don't have any work to do. And also being, I'm just going to say all the things today. I like to be transparent. And I feel like in this place that we're in right now in the world, it's just better to just say what you're thinking. There's a lot of content online right now. And for what? I mean, there's a lot of shit online. And I don't mean shit as in it's shitty. Actually, there's a lot of stuff online. And I'm not sure why we're doing when we have this place to reconsider the whys, because our whole field just crumbled. And so like putting out more and more and more and more and more stuff is very, very confusing to me. So just to bring it back, grief, which has led to stillness, which frankly has led to a certain degree of depression. But also just sort of looking at like, when it's time to re-enter, when I'm able to re-enter, how do I want to re-enter? So let me just take a moment and not do anything right now. So I'm curious to the panel, if you're making, how are you making, what are you making, and why are you making? Candace, I know I just hijacked your entire moderation right now.
It's okay.
You know I moderate for a living sometimes too, so apologies.
Yeah.
But like, why, like who, like what, who, what, and why? You know, I've been invited to do things and I just keep saying no. Because I can't figure out the why.
Cute. Looks like you got it. You're ready. You're brimming. It's coming out.
You know, like, man. Okay, where to start? Okay, I'll answer the Melanie's question first. I can say I've been blessed. I'm a blessed person. I'm a privileged person in the sense that when I entered 2020, I committed to be doing this daily practice of moving and documenting the moving every day. And that was just because I saw it from a friend, Yvonne Hernandez, and I was like, that's dope. Like, that's dope. To be able to commit yourself, to be able to discipline yourself, to meet yourself every day. And that's something up until this point I had not done that consistently. So I was like, let me hit that up. And so for that was my self-betterment. That was to use my body as a mirror to my soul, and like really understanding how my movement or my seeking to achieve something with my body would reflect back to me, especially when I did not achieve the thing that I was seeking to achieve. And so that process has been very self-reflective on a spiritual basis, on a relational basis. And so I feel as though that practice is a huge tool for this moment right now, where everything feels like chaos in so many ways. It's like, how do I center? This has been my practice this year, to center. This has been my commitment to center. And I wonder what our commitments are. What are we committed to? So many of us are committed to finding some version of success that has been manifested from a white supremacist, colonialist, capitalistic system. And to your point, Melanie, it has all fell. And so then it's like, well, what do I stand on? And so this practice for me has really been a consistent understanding, a daily understanding as to that why. And I do challenge all of us to really figure out because I'm assuming we're speaking mostly to dancers and movers. How does this thing that we love so much inform our own self-reflective practice versus trying to get somewhere, trying to do something outside of ourselves? How is it used to seek ourselves, to seek the quintessential spirit and desire and why we live and why we breathe. And yeah, that might look differently, but I think that that's an opportunity to really see how the different manifestations of that same practice, that's where our dance world needs to go.
I think if I could just respond to that real quickly, Q, what I appreciate about what you just said is that there is intent behind what you were doing. And so I'm not saying that I want anyone to have to justify to me their choices, but I appreciate your ability to language, well, here's the reason why I'm doing this. Like this is, there's intent behind me, being as active as I'm being. And I applaud you being active, because I think for a lot of people, the staying active is another form of self-care. We all have our ways.
Processing, right?
Yeah. But I think there's another thing, a version of what's happening right now is that there's this thing of, if I'm not seen, if I'm not visible right now, it's like I don't exist.
Yeah.
And that concerns me. It just, yeah. So I just wanted to respond directly to you, but I also want to stop talking so much so that Leal and Yo-Yo are speaking.
Leal and Yo-Yo, you want to do the kind of like stillness, grieving, rebuilding, which one you're doing and how it's affecting or not affecting your dance and art making practice.
Right. Yeah, I can speak a little bit to a lot that has been said already, but I just want to like uplift some of those points. Like, I think the identity that we carry that is so strongly bred in with the dancer identity is, or the artist or maker or product of all of these practices and processes, is something interesting that's coming up for so many of us right now. I actually, speaking of the why, I like, for those who know me like a little closer, approximately every 3 months, want to quit dance and like go to law school. And I'm not even kidding. I'm not exaggerating, because it feels self-indulgent. And I think it's important for someone to say that. And I hope, and I think, there's more of us who feel like that. And I've definitely had even more of these conversations in the past 2 months. What am I doing? And why am I doing this even? Does it matter? Is it necessary? To bring it to the whole theme of the talk. Are artists necessary? Is art necessary? Is art necessary now? So I really, really appreciate, and this is something that I've also been observing and kind of monitoring with myself. And I appreciate what you said, Q, of having this practice and doing it for yourself. And Melanie, what you said of the intent. We live in a product-driven dance community. Projects are set up to have a performance or to have a music video or to have, to create something. I think why I love dance, it's my first love. What I'm finding in these past 2 months, I'm doing it because I like it to do it. I, take the classes I like in my room, or just put on music, or as someone, sorry, I'm forgetting now who mentioned of this is like an act of self-care as well. Can be. Thanks, Melanie. Like for me, I know I have a ton of anxiety. Routines help me. My morning like run and like whatever class I want to take helps me. But I know that that's personal and it can look different for each and every one of us. And if you don't want to dance right now, you don't have to dance. It's going to be fine. If you've been training for 15 years and you don't dance for 6 months, it's going to be okay. I just feel like there's so much pressure, always. But yeah. So.
Is it okay if I turn it over to Yo-Yo?
Yeah, of course. Sorry. Go ahead.
That's fine. I'm acknowledging that there's a bunch of things being said on Facebook right now. I will get to them after Yo-Yo talks.
Yeah. Echoing what Melanie was saying, I've been grieving a lot. Like honestly, just like the onslaught of COVID, where we all knew it was coming and the government wasn't doing anything. It was like watching this like slow train wreck of just like run into us. And since then, I've just been struggling. Like, I've been struggling to move. I was supposed to go to this dancing intensive in Los Angeles with Alice Shepard, and it was going to be this magical moment where all these disabled dancers came together and can learn together. And it was like completely paid. They would put us up. It was like gonna be lit. And yeah, that's postponed till next year. And yeah, like just so much of that desire to be together again has been the only way I've been able to keep going. Like, I'm trying to build an online movement workshop taught by disabled dancers right now with Helena KK Brown. And yeah, it's also interesting to see like what used to be inaccessible to disabled folks is now virtually accessible. And I'm really interested in like continuing to build on this practice that disabled folks have been using and creating in virtual spaces for so long. So I see a lot of potential, and I see a lot of desire to keep sharing and keep being together in spite of this train wreck. And yeah, I think I resonate with a lot what Q has been saying, where it's so important to at least commit to something. Like, it can be a practice, it can be a ritual. Like, I've been literally just been writing down like how much chronic pain I have every day, and also what I did that day, just so I know that my body was alive and I was here. So this is a journal that I created. It's called the Resilience Journal. So I've just been like trying to stay resilient and just like mark making to remind myself that I'm still here.
Yeah, thanks for that. So yeah, it's just like, I guess people are processing in different ways, right? So some people, it's about doing nothing. Some people, it's about doing that daily practice that kind of marks the beginning and end of your day, that helps you process everything that's happening. I think, yeah, everyone is processing in different ways, but I think to Melanie's point about the intention behind what you're doing, or being clear about, I guess, what moment you're processing, right? So like if you're pausing and you're grieving, then that's fine. Like you're in that moment and that's a real feeling, a real response to what's happening right now. I'm gonna go, we have a lot of comments.
Candace,
so, yes.
May I say something real quick with that? I feel
Quick,
like,
so quick.
yes, so quick that like, if you're coming from the right intention, that is totally okay. Like, we got to check intentions though. Like, people who rest because they're lazy and because they don't want to do the work and they want to ignore what's happening, that's an issue. Right. If you're resting because you're going after it and you're trying, better believe I am carrying you right now, because I know that when I need to rest, you're going to be carrying me. But if you're doing it to stay away, bump that.
There's another version of that though, Q. I'm sorry, Candace. I know you're trying to move to this comment.
Hold on.
I gotta respond. There's another version of the volume of content though, which is we're tied to capitalism. And that is what I'm trying to point out, is that the volume of things I saw seemed very much tied to capitalism, in the same way that the volume of things that were happening before COVID were about who gets it and who doesn't get it.
But
who
I
has
think,
access to it and who doesn't have access to
but
it.
I think what Q is pointing out is more about in response, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Q, in terms of like specifically people responding to racial violence, people being champions for anti-racist practices, people doing that kind of work. Q, correct me if I'm wrong. Is that specifically what you're talking about?
Can you say that one more time?
I think I was just responding to what Melanie was saying, in that the work that you're talking about people avoiding doing is avoiding dealing with what's happening right now in terms of the racial injustice that's happening, and not speaking up or not being involved in some way, and not participating because it's hard.
Yes, or participating because they want to be seen and they haven't done the work. It goes the other way too.
Yeah, I hear you. Okay, so my people on Facebook, thank you for being with us. There are a lot of folks who are here. I'm giving some shout outs. Who we got? Stephanie Acosta, Ross Daniel, Catherine White Austin, Michaela Brandon, Derek Leon Washington, Rosabella Kelly, Stacey Webster, Jane Gabriel. Thank you for tuning in. I'm going to read a list of things that people have said, and then we can kind of pick and choose what we want to respond to. We had let's see, from Raja, can we figure out how people coming up don't have to keep going through it, and those who get through it are protected? I guess he's talking about this dance field and the system that runs it. It would be great to hear about class issues and the panelists' experiences. How have your statuses of being creatives, working, or have worked in major well-known institutions helped your organizing potential? Has it created barriers? I bring this up because I've seen protests here in New York, Bronx, Manhattan, and BK, and class differences, especially between African-American, Caribbean, and Latin communities, seems visible. Another comment, I don't think our field has crumbled. Our access to our field has crumbled. The institutions are trying to climb out of this just without us. Catherine White, Austin, I think the pause will invite dancers to make art that is organic and meaningful. It's an opportunity to redirect artistry. Comment from Ava, there's the time now to address things that need addressing and course correction. I think some people are getting that. I think Raja responds, I think we're going to be speaking more to people. Stephanie Acosta, believing in the power of dance and performance doesn't have to mean you believe in the professionalization routes that have been harshly carved out. Yep. What are your thoughts on organic manifestations of dance in the protest this week? We have seen crop house, diaspora, as well as social dances, all expressing different things in the protest context. Ooh, I like that last one. Any responses? That was a lot, but.
Just shout out to Miho, shout out to Big Miho, Crump King, shout out to Banks in New York City, who I don't know the other people he went out with, but also Crumpers went out and repped during the protest. I think it's showing some solutions as to how to be a part of it. So I appreciate the person who shouted them out and want to echo that.
Nice. Anybody else? But I think this kind of goes into the next thing that we want to talk about. Okay, so I know a lot of people are trying to figure out how to channel their efforts in support of Black lives and to work against injustice. And I sent us the image of mapping our roles in a social change ecosystem. It's been going around Facebook, so I'm sure other people have seen it too, but it basically, it's an image by Deeper Iyer of Solidarity Is and Building Movement Project. And she highlights different roles that people can play in social change. So people can be weavers or healers, disruptors, visionaries, guides. So maybe we can go around and just talk about what role you see yourself playing. And then if you've been a part of any movements that have happened so far, have you gone out to protest? Have you not? Have you signed an action? Have you not? Just how you're processing your role in the change that people are trying to create right now. Or maybe this has been a part of your ongoing practice.
I mean, I can go. Sorry, I had a lot of thoughts in response. It was just a lot of points. But I think going back a little bit to dance practices right now, and I'm not making anything. And what you just mentioned now, Candace, of what efforts can be And I'm going to tie it to broader dance community, but also like the efforts right now with Black Lives Matter. I think behind artists, we're also humans, and we all have experiences from which we can draw to help the people around us. For me, it's mental health. And I think, I mean, this is, you know, there's been an overwhelming need for more support now, obviously. That's what I'm channeling my efforts, daily efforts in getting more free resources, as, you know, unfortunately, healthcare is also capitalist, but so really making sure that the people who are losing income and struggling the most right now have access to free resources, and learning and pressing the organizations with which I'm involved to address mental health of our Black and Brown staff right now, because I guess it's not obvious, but I think, you know, there's also, you know, like the hierarchies of these big organizations, and I don't necessarily, or in the past, I haven't have a lot of feelings. I don't always, you know, feel like I can voice them, and this is the time to do that, to all my friends and people who, you know, think and feel similarly, even though we don't always have the solutions, but we have that power to speak up. Yes, protesting, yes, donating money, yes, signing petitions, yes, having conversations within our organizations, within our friends, with our families. That's all I'm gonna say on that, and pass it to whoever else wants to speak next. Oh, can I just add one more thing? Also,
yeah, do it.
Within this like crazy chaos of information and people like declaring their allyship right now, making sure that it lasts past like next week or the next month, and, you know, holding each other, holding ourselves, holding each other accountable of when we go back into, you know, our bubbles, we don't forget about this, because, you know, there was it erupts every now and then, and like the whole beginning of Black Lives Matter, then it dies down in certain communities. White people forget. It's easy for that to happen, but just holding each other accountable and holding our organizations accountable, that this is not just a statement, this is not a one-time donation, it's not, you know, a bunch of new hires. This is implemented and read into the thread of the missions, and these are also, like, again, empty words, but accountability, I guess, was my point.
Yeah, no, I understand that. So you've been, I guess, mainly guiding people to resources and having conversations.
Yeah, I mean, my project is young. We started in September, but this period, the last 3 months or so, have really kind of guided the project in new ways of what is needed. I hope that many people are realizing that we need to talk about mental health all the time, so that when the next crisis, not if, but when the next crisis happens, we're more prepared to help care for each other, for staff members, for family members, for, you know, for friends. We all have mental health 24/7. And it's something, you know, to nurture and take care of always. It's not only when we're in crisis or only when someone has a mental illness. So, and that can mean very different things, obviously, for everyone, but I feel like that's another thing that we're all people in general figuring out and realizing now. We all have mental health, like, through this pandemic and through,
Yeah. Other folks want to jump in terms of how you're guiding your role in social change?
Well, you know, Candace, I'm looking at the, forgive me, I'm old, I need my glasses. I'm looking at the list of the descriptions of these different identities. And
Mm-hmm.
I think I probably most align with guide, which says, I teach, I counsel, and advise using my gifts of well-earned discernment and wisdom.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think I see myself as an educator first in most situations.
Yeah.
That's, you know, that's the longest part of my career has been as an educator. I would add to that I'm just a strong believer in reflective practice and listening before doing, which isn't to say that people who are taking action shouldn't be taking action right now, but I do believe that everyone's action doesn't need to be doing. It can also be listening. I'm very, did someone already mention this today? Or maybe it's on another panel that I was watching, observing. I'm very wary and weary of performative allyship. And I'm seeing it. Seeing so much of it. And I know that the intent is probably coming from someplace good, but as we know, if your intent causes harm, it's actually the effect of it that should have more weight. And so I in looking at how I'm going to teach, guide, counsel, use my gifts of well-earned discernment, I'm also trying to be judicious about that and step back when there's someone who can say it better than me, or someone who is a few steps further along in the process than me. In the same way that with, my friends in the disabled dance community and my friends who are LGBTQIA, like I'm not in either of those things. And so I don't speak, right? Like it doesn't mean I don't advocate, but I don't present myself as being an authority figure in those areas, right? And so, and looking at where we are with this upheaval that we're in, I just kind of want to say out loud, as I've been saying all over Facebook, is there's lots of ways for you to support. And one of those ways might be being a little quieter.
Yep.
This new bit of discovery you might have found yesterday in your Google searching doesn't make you authority the next day. It just means you knew something you didn't know before. And we're all learning every day about all the stuff, I hope, Yo-Yo, you mentioned Alice Shepard, who's an artist that I've worked with, and Alice teaches me all the time, just in observing her about how the language I need to be using, and catching myself being ableist. Like I used the phrase tone deaf the other day, and then I was like, nope, cut that shit out.
I caught myself using that word too.
So I'm still learning because I'm not an authority. And so, yes, even in our awareness of the way white supremacy has oppressed us all, we're all victims of it. It doesn't mean we're all authorities about it.
I like that, Melanie. Thank you. And I think that's one of the reasons why I brought this framework, because it basically forces you to reconcile with where is your energy best served, right? Where will you have the most impact with your actions or non-actions, right? Everyone doesn't need to be protesting with the picket. Everybody doesn't need to be writing missives on Facebook. Everybody doesn't need to be giving city council hearing testimony, right? Like we all have our role to play. And if we're clear about what that role is, whatever we're trying to change, whatever we're trying to contribute to can be even more succinct and impactful if we have that intent, at least, or like personal intent. So other folks?
Thank you, each of you who have expressed thus far. Cosign. For me, as I look down the list of roles, I see myself as an experimenter. I think I'm so naturally rebellious, and so when I see the masses go that way, I want to go that way. And I think in that regard, I end up going into that experimenter role, which is I innovate, pioneer, and invent. I take risks and course correct as needed. I see myself as a visionary, which is I imagine and generate our boldest possibilities, hopes, and dreams, and remind us of our direction. And I think I am a builder. I develop, organize, and implement ideas, practices, people, and resources in a service of a collective vision. And so I think I see myself, I also see myself as a guide. I see parts of myself as a healer, especially on individual levels, not mass levels. But I think those first three are the main ones I resonate with. And what else did I want to say in this regard? Yeah, I'm going to stop there because I forget what I was going to say.
That's cool. That was brilliant. Yo-Yo, right? We haven't heard from you.
Yeah. I feel like typically I'm a storyteller. I've been having conversations with my friends, and usually in moments of like needing emotional support, and in a time where, let me just give you an example where I was just talking to different like white curators who were interested in my work, but they really wanted me to talk about my work in a way that sounded intellectual to them. And I just had this moment where I was like, why do I have to put merit and contextualize the work I create for you, you know? And I had this moment where I realized that so much of my work is about emotions and feeling and the experience of the work itself, and that the work that I want to create is always envisioning a new world, a different world. And I feel like in this time, especially, there's so much of this upheaval and this collective awakening in many ways, and this yearning for a different world. And I want to help envision that in some way. And so recently I've been feeling much more like a builder. Like I really want to help in organizing and implementing ideas in service of a collective vision. And yeah, often straddling that as an artist is difficult. But yeah, so many of you are artists, educators, and community facilitators in so many ways. Like, I think, yes, we are dancers, but I think because of the precarity of our work and the institutions that support our work, I hope that we have been implementing ways of creating a world that's different from that world. Yeah, I feel like in precarity, there is this urgency that occurs. Yeah, I'm kind of just like,
yeah, no, I hear you. And a lot more of us, a lot more of us are precarious now or those of us that have had privilege, that a lot of that privilege has been stripped. So we're all feeling the urgency to recreate what this world could be. I know we're coming close on time, so I feel like I want us to close with what do you need in this moment? I think we could just go around and share that.
I'll go. I need compensation for my labor.
Mm-hmm.
I need recognition that a lot of my labor is hidden.
Yeah.
Because I'm a dramaturg, my work is artistic and also service, which is different from when I'm teaching. That's a much more linear path. I need, can I say I desire instead of I need right now? I desire an understanding that if we're truly going to rebuild, that means some people have to give up their spots.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard this on the Dance Place panel yesterday, and I apologize for not remembering who it was that said it, but it really struck me, and that quickly it went out of my head. Oh, this is what it was. That your diversity and inclusion efforts can't be a committee adjunct to your entire institution.
Woo!
It has to actually be the foundation of your institution.
All right.
And that I slept on that, I drank on that, I napped on that, and it's still on my heart today. So my apologies for not crediting the person who said it yesterday, but the Dance Place panel, I'm sure, is still online, and I encourage you all to watch those 2 days of panels. I think lots of people are doing these kind of conversations, and no one conversation is going to hit all of the things you need from it. So as you're figuring out how to use your time and take care of yourselves, pop in and out of a lot of different conversations. There's a lot of different perspectives that are useful.
Thank you. Thanks, Melanie. Who's up?
I'll go. And on a social activist point of view, I will say I need, although on a basic foundational place, I'll say I desire. I need and desire for people to put respect on street and club dance.
Mm-hmm.
I need for people to do that, because there are multiple levels to oppression and oppressed peoples. And when it comes to this dance world, we are down there in so many aspects.
Mm-hmm.
And yet we are stripped. Well, that's a part of being the oppressed, but we are so valuable. We are the pool and the source to which so many value systems, so many practices, so much movement, so much money comes from. And I'll be the first. I'm shouting them out. I'm a guest of the community, especially here in New York City. I am a guest. I got here 3 years ago, but I love this community and I am committed to this community. And so I need us to put more respect on the value systems and the people who hold those value systems up.
Mm-hmm.
Sekou Haru, Sibo Terry Carr, Latasha Barnes, Moncel Durden, Disabella Grimes. Like I can go on, but there are people who are doing that work in this oppressed behind system that everybody sources, but nobody recognizes. And I'm tired of that crap. So that's what I need.
Thank you. Thank you. Yep. Mm-hmm.
I really want people to recognize how disabled folks have been using this virtual format to organize and be together long before this whole thing happened. And I want institutions to pay for their knowledge and labor and their wisdom about being together virtually. And I want institutions to also pay for all of the access laborers who should be compensated at the same rate as they would be if they were doing access work in person. And yeah, personally, I need people to listen. I think Melanie said that, where it's just like, oftentimes the solution to how we're feeling is for someone to hear us. And commit to having heard us. Yeah.
Thank you. Leal?
Yeah, I think I'm thinking of it more so in terms of what I need to do, because these needs feel like really strong. But I think I want and need for myself to hold on to some of these shifts in priorities that have occurred in the last few months and weeks. In my personal life and in my work, I think so much has been exposed and brought to the surface, and I'm at home and there's a whole lot of time to think about things, you know, so committing to these reprioritizations of things that I care about, but you know, they slip away at times. So that's what I need to do for myself. And that's also,
Yeah. So, folks, thank you so much for everything that you've shared. You know, I could reiterate the things that you've brought up, but I think we could just leave the vibrations that you've already set into the ether space. But thank you for all of the perspective that you've offered. And I know that a lot of what you're saying resonates with our folks that are watching and folks that will watch later on. So thank you for getting these perspectives and these ideas visible and experiential and out there, so for people to ponder on them. And thank you for joining us today. I'm gonna turn it over to Alejandra while shouting out Kendra Ross, Boris Willis, Ann Chiavarini, and we have 2 comments from Sarah Diller and Danny Terrell about honoring femmes, women, and queer bodies in street dance, and just thanking all of you again. So.
Thank y'all. Yeah, that was great, y'all. That was nurturing, and it was like balsam, like medicine, in this moment. I want to thank you all. I want to thank our speakers, each of you, the communities that you're a part of, that you serve, that you're connected to, that you lifted up today. And to Candace for kind of carrying us and leading us through this conversation, and really for leading the team right now throughout all of these conversations. To our Facebook audience, thank you for joining us. Thank you for being connected, for your thoughts, for your ideas, for your questions. It's wonderful to witness the conversation that happens side by side with the conversation that's happening, and how you add depth to that. So thank you so much. We could really feel your energy through the screens. Before I leave, I just have a few comments to close this out. As a reminder, our series continues next week. Typically, the conversations take place every Tuesday from 5:30 to 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So mark your calendars. Next week's conversation is titled Studio Practice Redefined. It'll feature Alicia Graf-Mack, Director of the Dance Division at the Juilliard School, Ali Beach, Director of Youth Programming at Broadway Dance Center, Charisma J, Founder and Artistic Director, Abundance Academy, and Michael Novak, Artistic Director of the Paul Taylor Dance Company. All of the resources that you shared or that came up during our chat and during our conversation today, we will be adding it to the event page on our website and to the Facebook event. So you can go back to those resources whenever you need. And we encourage you to please fill out our post-event survey. Let us know how we're doing and what are the kinds of conversations that you would like to have in the future. And without, we couldn't have done this by ourselves. We don't do this alone. We do this with a team of people and incredible staff. Our friends at LC Interpreting Services and Viscardi Center, and the different accessibility services that we were able to provide tonight. And lastly, and most importantly, we want to thank you and the many people in our city who are currently our frontline workers, our artists, all of the folks that are not only reimagining our future and putting their bodies on the line to ensure our care and protection, but also all of the many people that are out there protesting and that are not remaining silent in this moment. I appreciate our team, I appreciate this community, and I hope that you all have a wonderful Friday and a wonderful weekend. Thank you so much.